Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. More than once recently, we have talked about the verses in Lamentations 3. These verses serve as the basis for the hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness, and they seem to have a message that resonates with us and that we need to hear over and over. Lamentations 3:22 through 23 says, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness." What a gift to know the faithfulness of God to us, and what a gift that God's mercies come to us new every morning. As we begin this new year together, we are looking to the Bible for some examples of new beginnings we might find there. And as I told you yesterday, there are plenty to choose from. You might say we have a God of new beginnings. Today we want to look at the story of the woman at the well. It's an odd little story full of nuance that we might normally miss. Jesus and his disciples are passing through Samaria when Jesus stops by a well just outside the city. His disciples continued on into the town to buy food. And suddenly, all sorts of things are going on that we aren't very familiar with. First, any normal, self-respecting Jew wouldn't have gone into the area called Samaria and instead would have traveled around it. The Samaritans were looked down on by regular Jews. They were descendants of those who had been left behind when most of the Israelites had been carried off into Babylon in exile. Those left behind had married Canaanite women, and so most of the Jews looked down their noses at these folks they considered half-breeds. To make matters worse, they disagreed with regular Jews about whether to worship God in Jerusalem or on one of their own mountains. Regular Jews would just avoid the whole area. But Jesus went straight through. While Jesus is waiting by the well, a woman comes to draw water. And again, we have another aspect of their society we aren't too familiar with. In that day, no Jew would speak to an unaccompanied woman. It was against every custom they had. So when Jesus asks her for a drink of water, he's breaking the rules. And when the disciples return, this is why they are so astonished that Jesus and the woman are talking. But there's more. Drawing water is hard work. Water is heavy, and carrying it is difficult. Men didn't want to do it, so it was left to the women to get water for their daily needs like bathing and washing clothes and dishes. Since it was such hard work, the custom was for women to come to the well in the early morning before it got too hot and made the job even more unpleasant. But this woman came at midday to get her water. Many scholars have speculated about this and believe that this woman may have been a woman of ill repute, perhaps a prostitute who came at midday to draw water to avoid the sneers and gossip of the other women who had gathered earlier. Well, no self-respecting Jew would have dealings with a prostitute, and especially not a holy person like Jesus. At least that's what everyone thought. So the disciples were astonished even more that Jesus was talking with her. The conversation was about living water and about worshiping God from the heart instead of being concerned about where God should be worshiped. Then the conversation turned to her own past, and the sordid details came out, and it turns out that Jesus knew them all before he even started speaking to the woman. She ran into town to invite the others to come back with her to see and believe in Jesus. Jesus then stayed with the folks in that village for 2 more days. It's an amazing story of new beginnings. There were so many things that stood between the woman and Jesus, between Jesus and the village, but Jesus bridged those chasms and offered himself and God's love. To these go nowhere, no hope for anything better, rejected second-class half-breeds, Jesus gave acceptance and belonging. You have a new beginning, his words and actions told them. You belong to God, just like everyone else. Jesus gave them grace. That's where new beginnings come from. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.